Well, greetings and thanks for helping us kick off the Black Doctoral Network's Fall Workshop Series, which excitedly leads up to the BDN National Conference that's going to be held October 27th through 29th in Atlanta. Can we get some thumbs up for that? We're so happy to be back in person. I'll put the registration link in the chat just to make sure that you are registered and ready to attend. I'm Dr. Fatima Pierce, and today we're kicking off the first of 6 sessions in the workshop series with Beyond Academia, leveraging your doctoral degree for maximum impact outside of the ivory tower. Leverage, impact, such powerful words, right? In this presentation, you'll be led through reflective questioning strategies to discover your passions and interests. You'll learn how to use social media and websites to increase your influence. And most importantly, you'll leave today with a personal action plan for moving forward. Dr. Tony Harrison Kelly and Dr. Sharla Horton Williams are here to take us to that next level. Dr. Tony Harrison Kelly is a 15-year exemplary teaching veteran and education consultant, having worked with a variety of community partners and trained over 1,300 parents and teachers to date. Dr. Harrison Kelly earned her Doctor of Education in Curriculum and Instruction from Texas A&M University, where she focused on researching student engagement in high poverty, high minority schools. She currently leads the collaborative community involvement efforts of Southern Methodist University as the executive director of the Budd Center for Communities and Education at Simmons College of Education and Human Development. Welcome, Dr. Harrison Kelly. Dr. Sharla Horton Williams is a career educator and organizational leader with a strong commitment to and vision for equity and justice in schools. Over the past 20 years, Dr. Horton Williams has served as a teacher, assistant principal, and principal in private, public charter, and traditional public schools. As a full-time education consultant and co-founder of School Leadership for Social Justice, Dr. Horton Williams works with districts and schools across the country to develop and actualize a vision and comprehensive strategy for equity and excellence. She also earned her Doctor of Education from Texas A&M University, and currently she's leading the collaborative academic recovery efforts to support 150,000 students across 3 Dallas area school districts. Welcome, Dr. Horton Williams. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, or shall I say conversation, because we want you to be engaged. Use the chat, raise your hand if you have a question, and you'll also have an opportunity to provide us feedback through an evaluation, which I'll put the link in the chat when we get started. So with that, Dr. Harrison Kelly, the floor is now yours.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for pressing through this day and joining us this afternoon. We are excited to get to be with you this afternoon. So I am Dr. Tony Harrison Kelly. You just heard that bio. Thank you so much, Dr. Pierce. I love the things that you see on the screen. I love Jesus. I love line dancing and, like the electric slide, but like really hard, super complex. I love everything Star Wars. So shout out to my fellow Star Wars geeks. I am also currently at Southern Methodist University, although when we first developed this presentation, I was an 8th grade teacher, and that was just in January. So it's been quite the shift, but super excited to share how we got our consulting business going and a little bit about us. And as she mentioned, we are proud Texas Aggies.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sharla, and on the screen, you'll see a picture of my daughter who I thought graduated from college, and I just found out that she didn't. So while that's an interesting story, I'll save it for later. But proud parents of 3 amazing kids and Dalton, who thinks he's one of my boys on the screen. Again, tonight, we are just going to engage in a thoughtful and reflective and hopefully inspiring conversation to help you figure out like what's next. What we know is that lots of people go through doctoral school with aspirations of teaching in higher ed or higher ed, administration. But then there are those of us who don't aspire to the ivory tower at all. And so tonight we are going through this process of just discovering all of the possibilities for you that exist outside of the ivory tower, now that you have or soon will accomplish those letters, achieve those letters behind your name. What Tony and I do is really work from our passion and work from our heart. And that's going to be what we share with you tonight. We believe that Black and brown students deserve the chance to thrive in school. And we believe that every single educator has the power to create this opportunity for academic and educational excellence for them. And ultimately, we want to change the story for Black and brown kids in schools. If you are in a school, if you're in education, if you've been around education, if you've turned on the news, you know that the story for students of color in schools is often a horror story, disproportionate outcomes, both academically and socially. And we just believe that that educational injustice can change. We believe that our students have a right to a high quality academic experience where they feel affirmed and also where they are set up for long-term success. And so in essence, that's what we want. This is our vision, just and equitable schools where every student thrives academically and socially. So we work around the country, like Dr. Pierce said, helping educators to understand the role that they can play in achieving these outcomes for students. We help them grow in cultural competence and racial consciousness, and then figure out the everyday actions that they can take to actually accomplish the vision that we have for students. So now that you know a little bit about us, would love to know a little bit about you, like who's in the room, what's your current job or your role, what's your degree and concentration, where are you, and what else do you want to share with us that'll help us to have a robust and engaging conversation tonight. So feel free to type your brief intros in the chat.
While we're doing that, I just wanted to call your attention to the updated conference registration link. So please go to bdnconference.com for the latest information. You can also raise your hand and come off mute if you wanted to introduce yourself very quickly.
Hi, my name's Leah Angel Daniel, and I'm here by way of Buffalo, New York. My current job is I am an executive director of a nonprofit organization that assists foster care youth, young adults, and alumni of color who are transitioning out of the foster care system. I am currently ABD in my doctoral program, and I am working on my EDD and executive leadership at St. John Fisher University in Rochester, New York.
Thank you so much. We'll just say congratulations, Dr. Daniel, and go ahead and do that. We see Charles, who's an IT professional at American College of Education, loves football and coffee. I would challenge you to put your team in the chat if you stand behind that football team. Fellow football fan here. Director of Sustainability and Culture and Administration at Georgetown. Somebody else here in DC with me, ABD, future Dr. Thomas. And more are coming in. So I think we have a great mix of folks in the room. And Dia, you raised your hand, so we'll do your introduction and then turn it back over.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I had to go next because I heard a fellow Buffalo homegirl talking. So I hardly ever meet people from Buffalo, which also means that I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and we handled those Titans and some other teams already. And I'm at Morgan State University. I'm an associate professor, been in academia for a really long time, getting toward retirement, and came here tonight because I wanted to hear about some things I might do after retirement. So I'm really excited that you all are education consultants because that's what I'm thinking about. Thanks.
Congratulations.
So this is Dr. Charles Gibson. So I'm actually glad to be here because I work in the IT field, but I recently finished my education doctorate. And one thing that I'm looking for is a career change. I definitely want to work in with either in data science, statistics, or in academia. And one frustration I've had is being able to try to find a road into academia with having a doctorate, but no academic teaching experience. So yes.
I
Great.
think we're going
Thank
to
you.
cover a little bit of that tonight. I hope that you find some of the things that we share helpful. And I will say that one of the things, anybody who's worked in any field for any period of time is a teacher. And one of the challenges that we have is digging deep inside and figuring out, like really identifying those teacher experiences that we've had and naming them and creating, like really presenting the rationale behind us calling ourselves teachers.
Indeed.
And
Yeah.
Dr. Charles, I'm currently hiring for a data analyst position that works directly with schools at my university. So your job is out there. So we're supporting you in that.
Look at that
Awesome.
power.
Indeed.
That wasn't a job offer, but I'm saying it's out
Okay.
there. And I would love to talk to you, but there are jobs like something that you would fit for.
Okay.
They're out there. So that's what we're going to talk about today is all of these different truths about ourselves, about our journey, about where we would like to head. What do we want to do? And so I don't think as adults, we take enough time to just stop and really pause everything and say to ourselves, what do I want? What do I want? Who am I? And how can I integrate everything that is me into my work? And so today we're going to attempt to just stop and think about who you are and how that can make sense for your profession. So what you'll need tonight is some paper, or there's some reflective activities that we're going to do. You could also join us by clicking the link to our learning log. The learning log just has these questions that we're about to discuss and go, and these activities has them outlined for you. Charlotte is dropping that into the chat. And so the learning log will prompt you to make a copy. So when you click the link, it's going to say, do you want to make a copy? Say yes. So that way you can type directly on it and not change anybody else's version of the document. So go ahead and click into the chat there and get the learning log if you are interested in having that, or just be ready with your paper and pencil. The last thing you're going to need is an open mind. So we're going to dream and explore tonight. And so that's going to require thinking differently and seeing things differently. So have an open mind.
So you've heard a little bit about us, but we're going to walk you very briefly through our journey and how we got where we are. Dr. Kelly and I actually met 30 years ago in undergrad. So we've been friends. We've been best friends since 1993.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming up on our 30 year. And while we were in undergrad, both of us, Tony was a biology major, I was a social work major, and we both got jobs at a little preschool right off campus, TLC preschool. And little did we know that that job, that experience, that year and a half that we worked for Miss Margaret at TLC would actually be the catalyst for our long-term careers in education. We worked at TLC for a couple of years through graduation. And then because I was a social worker and both my husband at the time and I did not make a lot of money, but then we started having kids, we started a preschool because I wanted, number one, to be actively involved in my kids' life every day. But I also wanted them to have a really, really high quality early education experience. So we started the Joshua School. I worked there for the first 4 or 5 years by myself, and then, well, not by myself, but, and then Tony came and joined me as director of education. So we led this micro school for about 10 years. And then from there, both of us took independent positions. I went into Crowley ISD, Tony went into Dallas ISD, where she was a master teacher. I was a teacher, assistant principal, and principal. And then we came back later and went to Texas A&M at the same time. Thank God we got into the same doctoral program, and we're able to matriculate through that together, because we don't call it EDDs, we earned our WEDD, because if I didn't have her and she didn't have me, I don't know that we could have we darn sure wouldn't have gotten through statistics. But so we made it through because we had each other's support, and also cultivated a very supportive external group of friends as well through the program. At the end of our studies, I don't remember if it was prior to defense or during defense, Dr. Valerie Hill Jackson, who was on my dissertation committee, asked, what are you going to do with this information? Sharla, the research that you've done and the paper that you've written has so much potential in changing the trajectory of the lives of Black and Brown students in our schools, because what you've done is you've identified what it takes to be an effective social justice leader in education. And me, I was just going through this, I just wanted to get finished, right? Like I didn't have any plans on doing anything after defense, just wanted to get finished. But she encouraged us to find a way to share our research and our findings with the broader public. And so we thought an easy way to do that, we'd start a Facebook group. Tony and I both studied the achievement gap and Black student performance, but through very different lenses. I focused primarily on the school leader's role in closing the achievement gap, and she focused primarily on the teacher's role in closing the achievement gap, and how through increasing student engagement, we actually ultimately can impact student performance. So we had very similar lines of study, and we decided that it would be really great if we took a comprehensive approach at sharing our findings and our research with people who were interested in better serving Black and Brown kids. We fully expected that it would be, a couple of hundred people. When we started our Facebook group, it was mostly the people that I worked with that were trying to be supportive, because I sent them invites and said, join our Facebook group or like our page. And then one day we looked up and there were 3,500 educators from across the country, from actually global presence as well, who had said essentially, by joining this group and starting to actively engage, yeah, this matters to me and I want to learn how to be a more effective educator for students of color. From there, people started asking about consulting, about training, about, oh, do y'all do workshops? And we hadn't, but we said we could. And from there, what started as just a Facebook group, an opportunity, a space to share our research and really share our hearts with people. We started both a nonprofit, we're a recognized 501c3 and an LLC. We do our work with schools and districts through our nonprofit, and we do our work with businesses, school adjacent organizations, and public agencies through our LLC, Horton Kelly Company. And so what you see there is not just a story of our life, but it's the evolution of our careers. And it really does tell the story of what's possible for you, hopefully, by finding your thing, taking hold of it, and leveraging it to create new opportunities for yourself. So ultimately, our goal is to change the whole wide world, like one teacher at a time, one principal at a time, one school at a time. But that starts with imagining a world that's different than the present. And even imagining a world that's different than the present starts with recognizing what the present status is. One of the impetuses for us starting our consulting firm was really just stopping and recognizing the state of education of Black kids in our country and saying we're not okay with it. And also realizing the role that we played in where we are, just by virtue of the fact that we were just cogs in the system to some degree. We were showing up every day doing what we were supposed to do and not really presenting presenting with a radical approach or even a vision for anything different. So this grounding quote we use in every single training we do. The ability to imagine a world that's different than the present is the beginning of any movement for change. To be able to communicate the world one imagines to others and have it feel possible is the power of narrative. And as we go through the next few minutes together, we want you to think about two worlds. Number one, the world at large, the whole world. What's possible? What could change? Where's your personal conviction about changing the world? But then also think about your world, think about your existence in life and what's possible for you. What do you want to change in your personal career? What do you want to change in your personal life? And we hope that the time that we're going to spend going through these 10 steps that we're going to share with you tonight will help you, help it feel possible to you. So tonight is going to be about writing a new story for the whole wide world, but also writing a new story for yourself.
So we're going to start with 5 questions for discovering your next steps. So we are teachers at heart. We know that if we are asking these questions, we need to answer them first, because that's the way that we develop relationships and connection. So the question is going to pop up on the screen. I'll answer, Sharla will answer, and then we'll give you space to think. Now, not a lot of time, because we only have 36 more minutes, give or take, together. But we'll at least give you some time to think through the question, and the questions are all outlined on your learning log. So the first very basic question is, what is your research topic or focus? Where did you start, and what are you starting with as far as your doctorate is concerned? So as Sharla mentioned, I focused on gamification and how gamification can be used to increase student engagement for Black students. My findings showed that peer connections were increased when I used gamification, which is what in turn increased engagement. So very interesting discovery. What about you, Sharla?
I studied the knowledge, skills, and dispositions. What do school leaders, if you're going to effectively lead for social justice, effectively lead to change outcomes for Black kids, what do you have to know? What do you have to believe? And what do you have to do? And then ultimately, I really did I think if I had to narrow all that down and tell you like the highlight, the thing that I think matters the most is what George Theo Harris calls arrogant humility. And it is this idea that I'm humble enough to know that I don't know everything, but I'm arrogant enough to know that what I do know is sufficient to get the job done for Black and brown kids. So that was my particular area of research and focus. Think about yours. You can either drop it in the chat, or you can use the learning log if you want to go through every single process. But first, what was your research, or what is your area of focus? And we'll spend just a couple of minutes for you to share that, for you to write that. Community-based learning, understanding the barriers between the transition from high school to first year of college. Yes, that's good stuff. So the first question is very simply, what's your research topic or focus? The second question is, who does it matter to most? Does it matter to industry? Does it matter to some particular company? Does it matter to some particular group of people? And why? Who would most be interested and affected by your research? So for me, the answer to that question, I think I can answer in 3 different ways. I think the people who would be most interested in my research would be, number 1 would be education preparation programs, particularly those like school leadership, principal preparation. So that's higher ed in colleges of education. Also, districts who have like grow your own programs and who are looking to either hire and or develop school leaders who can effectively lead through a social justice lens. And last but not least, who does it impact the most is going to be, of course, students of color who are on the opposite end of the research that we've done. What about you, Tony?
I would say it matters most to folks who are attempting to teach well in environments that have been historically under-resourced and who are teaching majority African-American students. So that was the type of school that I came from and that I did my research in. And those are the schools that many times need extra supports.
So now you think about and share who this research, your research, matters most to, and who would care about your findings. Who cares about the work that you've done, and who does it matter most to? take just a second for you to either capture your thoughts on your learning log or drop them in the chat if you care to share.
Sure, we have all kinds of experts on this call. It's really
I see.
fascinating. It's all over. Some networking happening in the chat.
Yes, I was just going to say, I know we'll get to social media in a second, but if you wanted to include your LinkedIn link or website or other ways of connecting, please feel free to do so.
The third step in discovering your next steps is to summarize how your research benefits others in 2 to 3 bullet points or 2 to 3 very brief sentences. And this is really important because if you're like me, you think every single word in your dissertation matters. You think every single word is critical, and it is. But I guarantee you, and those others in the room who have already written and or published, the likelihood of the average person reading through your entire dissertation and figuring out what it means for them is slim to nothing. So it's important that we're able to very concisely summarize our research, but in a way that's also compelling to those people that are in, that we answered in question number 2, that we identified in question number 2. So consider it an elevator speech. What would you tell one of those people in that you answered from question 2? My answer to that is inequity in schools is a very real problem, and we all have a responsibility to achieve racial equity in education. It's good for students and it's good for society that we achieve racial equity. So when principals, who are the key leaders in schools, initiate and lead the work of educational inequity in their schools, they can then change the outcomes for students who have been historically underserved. And then what does that mean? The greater an education students get, the less likely they are to engage in risky behaviors, to engage with law enforcement, the more likely they are to be healthy and positive contributors to society. So who are the people that you identified in number 2, and how does this research that you've done benefit them? What about you, Tony?
So my topic was engagement and gamification. And so we are now talking about culturally responsive pedagogy. That's become a buzzword in our education system. But how do we do that? What does it look like? And for African-American students, they need special care and special attention to the things that are important to them, like any other student group. And so in my research, I was able to use gamification, video game techniques that kids are already familiar with, to increase engagement, and engagement increased because they felt more connected to the people in their class. So highlighting the social aspects of learning and making sure that we put those in as we are learning to teach better and to teach African-American kids better. That was fun.
So take a minute and summarize how your research benefits others in 2 to 3 bullet points. Why do they need it? What impact is it going to have on those people? The fourth question in discovering your next step is, what would happen if your research findings were utilized widely? So we started with like, what do we even study? And then we moved into why it matters, who it benefits. And now we're moving into the rationale for why people need to take action and why we actually need to utilize the findings from your research. So why would you tell people what would happen if the research that you've done were actually utilized widely? So for me, I stop and think, like, if we really focused on and invested in educational equity, we would see radical changes in Black student performance. Right now, we know that Black and brown students have the poorest outcomes in just about every single measure, every single grade level, every single content area. So if we were able to utilize, if we utilize the findings, utilize my research, we would have highly competent, highly effective principals in schools serving Black and brown kids, and their subsequent academic outcomes would improve dramatically.
And mine is very simple. Student engagement would increase. So if teachers utilize gamification or focused on engagement strategies, we see a higher level of engagement, which we've seen in research ties to higher levels of performance and comprehension. So what about you?
Mm-hmm. Derek says there'd be graduate level programs that prepare education leaders to understand the transition between high school and college. Right now, Derek, do enough graduate level programs prepare enough education leaders to understand sufficiently the transition between high school and college? I would answer that question as no, but you might, you maybe so, but I would imagine that there aren't nearly enough people that are sufficiently prepared with this level of education that you're talking about. Mavis says it would reduce suicidality within the African-American male population. Like, that's a big deal. If we looked and stopped and understood what the current story is for Black males and their suicide rates, like, how critical is it that we reduce those numbers, not just a little bit, but dramatically? Tony, what's the 5th question?
What might happen if your research findings are not utilized? The things that Sharla just mentioned from the chat, if those things weren't widely known, what would happen? And I shudder to think the importance of the research that we've seen tossed out in this chat needs this research needs to be heard. It needs to get out there. So just thinking, what would happen if you didn't share? If Sharla and I decided not to go and talk to people and teachers about equity, that means that one more Black or brown child will be sitting in a classroom without an adequately prepared teacher, without a teacher who understands their perspective and is attempting to focus on teaching in a just way. So it's huge if we don't do the thing that we know is right concerning our research.
So what about you? What's at stake? If your research is not utilized, what is at stake, both within your discipline, within the broader context of society? And again, you can capture that on your learning log, or you can share in the chat, or both. While you're doing that, what we've done with questions 3 through 5, questions 1 and 2 is just very basic. What are we doing? What did we do? What are we studying? And who does it matter to? What we've done with questions 3 through 5 was establish the value of the work that we've done through our doctoral research. And that's so important, because you've got to be able to issue a clarion call for action. We're going to talk about how later, all the ways that we can do that. But it is so important that we can reduce our super academic and scholarly work down into very digestible, meaningful, and compelling terms to different audiences. So take just a couple of minutes and finish up questions 1 through 5. What did I study? Who does it matter most to? How does it benefit others? What happens if my findings are widely utilized? And what's at stake if they're not? What happens if this just sits on the shelf like so many dissertations do? Those are the first 5 questions for discovering your next steps after achieving or upon achieving your doctorate.
Thanks for sharing your dissertation link, Dr. Charles.
Oh, no problem.
So we
just-
started with the first 5. Go ahead, Dr. Pierce.
I was just going to say, just in the interest of time, if we wanted to keep going, because we do want to take questions. I know that folks have a lot of questions.
So we started with the first 5 questions. Next, the next 5 questions are not necessarily about your research, but they're about you. So question number 6 is simply, who are you? Go ahead, Dr. Kelly.
So on the screen, you see the circles of identity activity. If you've never seen it before, we're about to do it very briefly. So this is Sharla's answer to circles of identity on the left, and I'm on the right. So I'll go first. So in the middle of the circle of identity, you're going to put your name. And then around the outside, you're just going to put those first 5 things that come to mind about you. So for me, it's that I'm an introvert. I'm adventurous. I like to connect with people. So I'm relational. I'm a motivator and a connector. And Sharla, on the other hand, is very task oriented. She's also an introvert, but she's very creative and she's a leader and she loves to be on stage. Did I miss anything, Sharla? Anything you want
Nope, you got it.
We're alike in many ways, but very different in other ways. But who are you? So that was your example. If you'll take just a few minutes to draw a circle in the middle and put 5 little circles around it, and just what pops in your head when you think of yourself, who are you? You're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this. Go ahead and fill that in. We'll just give you a few seconds for that.
And these can be positional, these can be like quality traits, these can be how you feel like you show up in the world, because all of that matters in the grand scheme of how you best actualize your hopes for your next steps. So the first step in who are you is those 5 identifying words, right? But then the next thing is to dig a little bit deeper. Like, what are your strengths? What are your skills? From the Gallup Strengths Finder, my strengths are achiever, activator, learner, and command. Things that I'm also really skilled at, I'm skilled at developing and creating like products and plans and strategies. I have a very creative eye, so I tend to make things look nice. I'm skilled at public speaking and I'm skilled at writing. However, I'm not skilled at academic writing. I'm more skilled at informational writing. And I'm not good at managing time and prioritizing. I will spend all the time doing the wrong things. I'm not good at editing and proofreading. I'm not good at connecting one-on-one with people. Put me on a stage in front of 1,000 people and I shine. Put me in a room with one person and I don't know what happens. Like, I just lose it. I'm also not good at sales and marketing because I think it relies a lot on that one-on-one. And I'm really not good at listening. And it's not because I don't care about people. It's because essentially I have ADHD and it's hard for me to just tune in and listen to people for long periods of time. While it's important for you to know who you are, how you show up in the world, it's important for you to know your strengths and your skills. It's equally important for you to know where your gaps are and what you're not good at.
So I'm good at the things in the top box and analysis and relationship building, but I am not good at long-term tasks. Like, if it takes a whole bunch of follow-up, I should put in this box. Not really good at that at all. And then I struggle a little bit with managing adults. So these are a little bit about me. And Sharla already described hers, but what are your strengths and skills? Just a few bullets outside of the 5 things that you've added. And then what are you not good at? Because that is equally as important as what you are good at. We want to make sure that as you're rethinking your career and starting new careers, that you're focusing and honing in on this alignment with your strength.
So question number 6 is, who are you? Question number 7 is, what's your dream? If you could do anything for a lot of money or for no money at all, what would it be? When you see yourself doing something where you're thriving, where you're happy, where you're operating in your zone of genius, what is that? I told y'all I love a stage. I have always seen myself as a speaker. I also love strategy development. And while I'm not good at one-on-one, like relational connecting, I'm very good at helping people think through issues, like where I'm leading a strategy conversation. So those are 2 of the things that I really, really love to do.
My dream is to travel the world and give keynote speeches. That's my dream. I
Black Brene Brown.
want to be the Black Brene Brown. I want to write some books in between my speaking engagements and travel the world. That's like my dream. And that it's kind of coming true a little bit with all this good, cool stuff we're going to do recently. So what's your dream?
So who are you? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? And what is your dream? If you could do anything in the world every single day, what would it be? Question number 8 is, what do you not want to do ever? I will tell you that after many, many years of being a school leader, I never want to be a principal again. And I don't ever not want to be a principal because I don't think it's not an important job. I really do. But it was not aligned to my strengths. Being a principal required a lot of one-on-one relationship building with students, with families, with teachers. And while I was good at it, it also exhausted me. Because what I was not doing was operating from my strengths. I was operating from my ability and my passion and my ability and my strengths. While they were tangentially connected, they weren't like really closely interwoven. Therefore, my job as the principal was really, really, really hard for me because it didn't allow me to operate from my zone of genius as much as I needed to.
I'd never want another job that is not completely flexible with the time. That has been the biggest change from being a teacher to now getting to be in higher ed administration. I don't ever want to be tied to a bill or a schedule again. So those are the things that we're thinking that we're pretty sure we don't ever want to do again. What are some things that you're like, no, I tried it, no way?
And that's the reason why this is so important, is because so often we move on opportunity, not on alignment. And as you think about what your next step is, when you think about taking all this work that you've done, you don't want your work to be lost, your research to be lost in a misaligned opportunity. What you want it to be aligned, what you want is an opportunity that is completely aligned so that you can thrive, and the benefit of your work is not lost in the exhaustion, in the frustration, and in the inability for that stuff to really come alive in the work that you're able to do every day. So who are you? Strengths and skills, also like gaps and things that you're not good at. What's your dream? What do you not ever want to do? Number 9 is, who are the people that already trust you? Who are the people that look to you for information, for expertise, for advice? And that can be both professionally, that can be like in your discipline, but think about the people that you already have access to that trust you, that trust your judgment, that trust your knowledge and your expertise, and why. For me, that is, although I just said I never want to be a principal again, I have a lot of trust. Principals trust me. They trust me for a couple of reasons, because I've done the work that they do, because I spent 4 years researching around the work that they do, but also because I have a level of being a principal is as much about strategy as it is about information. It's as much about strategy as it is about relationships. And so I have this keen ability to help people understand the necessity of developing a strategy, but I also have sufficient experience to walk them through the process. So they see what I've done. They've known my failures. I'm very transparent about what I did well during the principalship and what I didn't do. So therefore, they look to me for guidance, for direction, for information, and even just for inspiration in their role as principals.
Yes, for me, teachers trust me. I was never a school leader, so that's how Sharla and I work so well together. We balance there. But teachers definitely, and even students. So it's fun to have that trust and to be able to capitalize on that. And then the last one is who might not trust you and why. So now you're thinking about who are the people that do trust you, but who might not trust you and why. For me, the last question is I really rarely ever, never do leadership training for principals without Sharla, right? Because I don't have that direct experience. So who might not trust you and why?
So the first 5 questions were really about your work and your research. The next 5 questions are about you. And the reason why this is so important is what we're talking about today is something that most people don't do. We're helping you through the process of charting your own path. We often, when we think about our work, we only think in terms of what's already out there, or we only think in terms of what we've already done. But there's so much more that we could do that if we just stop and explore a little bit about who we are and connect that to what we have done and studied, we'll see that the possibilities are pretty endless. This is really simply, it's a thematic examination of like who you are and what you want to do. So our thematic examination, both of us, we've always loved kids, which is why we work in or around education. We both love making learning relevant and fun, both for students and for adults. We enjoy being comedic, like we just have fun. We think that, that fun and joy should be a part of everything that you do. Therefore, we could never work in very rigid environments. And we also love to think creatively. Like we spend a lot of time just pontificating what could happen if this happened in education, if we were to do this. So this is who we are as people. So think about you. What have you always been passionate about? For us as kids and learning, what have you always received compliments for doing? We've always received compliments for the way we train and work with adults. And then what would you do every day for no money or no recognition? And for us, like, honestly, that's dreaming. We would literally sit all day, every day, and think about how to save the world. And we do that for no money or no recognition. So stop and think about the recurring themes in your own life. And our formula for figuring out what's next for you is very simple. It's what you're good at. It's what you're passionate about, what you love. And that's what equals what you could possibly do, because who knew 10 years ago when I was teaching 8th grade social studies, and then I was an assistant principal in a high needs school, that I would one day be traveling around the world and people would be calling us to come and train their teachers. I mean, to date, y'all, we've probably trained up nearly 10,000 educators around educational equity and DEI. Not something that I ever imagined would be possible, really didn't imagine that we start and manage a successful consulting firm if you just looked at where we were 10 years ago. But what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And that's what actually equals what's possible for you. So the possibilities are quite endless. And I'm going to tell you that our current gig that we have in this consulting role started with a blog. You know, we started this Facebook group and then we wrote a blog, and the blog kind of took off, right? I think to date it's got about 20,000 views or something. So people read it and started talking about our work. And so writing is a possibility. It is a gateway into your next thing. And I know as scholars, we typically think of journals, we think of scholarly journals, but there's so much more that you can do. Blogging, freelancing, Writing for discipline, publications within your discipline. I think somebody said they were an IT analyst, like literally technical writing, even helping people to make the connections between the deep technical components of the work and the practical application. That's a skill that is much needed. And then even writing curriculum. There's so much that we do that we don't realize how we're doing it. And being able to take what we know and what we've done in practice and turning it into a simple how-to or a guide for learning for others within our discipline, within our company. But writing is an excellent opportunity for starting your consulting business and leveraging your personal expertise. The next is teaching. I heard lots of people say, I adjunct, I'm a teacher, here, that. But think outside that even. You can teach your own course. That's exactly what Tony and I did. We wrote courses and we teach them to teachers. You can tutor, you can even create a very simple YouTube. There are all kinds of platforms where you can teach what you've learned through your research. You can become a public speaker. You can give keynotes. We just gave keynote, like that's one of our favorite things to do, is to stand in front of whole districts and whole schools and whole associations and give keynote addresses. And if nobody invites you to give a keynote, give your own keynote on YouTube. Here's the deal. The deal is, until you are well known for your research, you've got to create your own sense of notoriety, right? Like you've got to put yourself out there. So you can very easily turn your camera around on your cell phone and you can record yourself talking about the thing that you are an expert at, and you can share it with the world. Conference presentations and podcasts. Next, you can provide a service. One of my side hustles, y'all, I write resumes and websites for people in education. You know why I do that? Number one, I told y'all I'm super creative, like I have a creative eye. I've also been a hiring manager in education for a long time, so I know what people are looking for when they open a resume or a Vita in the education field. I also started doing websites for people who are in education because I speak the language. Therefore, I have a very unique skill set in that when people are providing a particular service or they have a particular consultancy, I'm able to use the language of the discipline with also where it lands and resonates with the end user. So I was able to take like all those little things and figure out a whole new gig, and I make a whole extra, it's not a lot, but I make an extra $5,000 or $7,000 a year just doing something that I put together because I'm good at and there was a niche for it. So you can provide services. And then last but not least, you can just get a whole new job. You can get a new job in a new company, or you can get a new role in a new industry. Totally up to you. The number one thing for you to realize is that you are the expert in your topic. You are the expert in your discipline. And by you stopping just and thinking about those questions 1 through 5, who does this matter to? What happens if I share this? And what's at risk if I don't? Number one, that's your motivation, right? So that's your starting point, your launching pad. The next thing is to do that part we did in the middle where you're really examining who you are and what's good. If you're shy, take speaking off the list. You can't be a public speaker if you're shy. That's okay, because look at all the other possibilities that exist. I have a whole doctorate and wrote a whole dissertation, but you'll never catch me trying to publish in a scholarly journal because that's not my group. I don't write like that. So what I've had to do is find out what are the other avenues for me to share my expertise with people in my field in ways that's really meaningful for them. So 3 key truths. Tony, you want to share our 3 key truths?
Sure. Your work matters, period.
Period.
Your work matters. Number 2, you can create endless opportunities. The things that we listed are only the tip of the iceberg. These are some of the things that we've thought through, that we've tried, but there are lots of ways if you're open to exploring new avenues. And number 3, your best work happens when you're in alignment, when there's joy, when you're in your strengths, and when you're working from your place of passion. So that's what today was all about, was finding that alignment within yourself and aligning it with what you want to do, your future self, and then just exploring and dreaming and figuring out what is possible for you. Because until we can write the new story, then we can't live that story. So excited to have gotten to be with you today. We have a few minutes left for Q&A. And I know there's also an evaluation that Dr. Pierce had.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's so much to take in, but what I love about this presentation is that it is a strategy. It is information that we can actually use. It's not just empowerment, but tangible things that we can take and use. So we may go over just a few minutes for Q&A. So I invite the audience to stay and feel free to raise your hand or ask a question in the chat. I did put the evaluation link in once, but I will pop it in just once more. And we'll take questions. We have some comments. This was amazing. Thank you so much. This was amazing. This was great. What's the best way to connect with the two of you? Is it to join the Facebook group, or do you have other links that you want to put in the chat?
So I just added our email addresses in the chat. That's great. If you're an educator, I never have the link to our Facebook group, but if you simply search it, it's School Leadership for Social Justice.
It's also on the learning log as well.
Oh, it's on the learning log. Great. Hey,
Mhm.
Dr. Hunter, so glad you were here. Thank you. So exciting. And the one thing I want to say, Dr. Pierce, as we close and wrap up, like, I want y'all to understand we did not seek out a consultancy. Our consultancy found us because we operated from this place of like passion and joy and what we're good at. So we encourage you, like, just try everything. Try writing a blog. If it doesn't do anything, fine. Record a YouTube video. That doesn't do anything, fine. Write a training and present it to a school. But try things until you find the thing that's your thing.
I think that's so powerful because it's the law of attraction, right? You have to put it out there and then it'll come back. So in the opening comments, we talked about building your influence, using social media, using websites, writing those blogs, and all that time. You never know who's watching. You have access to the entire world. And those people that you mapped out who need what you have to offer will find you, So I appreciate that. Those words of wisdom. Dia, you have your hand up.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. This is really amazing. So just a shout out, I'm giving the workshop next week for those who have narrowed their interest to higher ed. So we'll talk about that next week, but I've just been really well informed by this workshop personally. So I really, really appreciate that because I'm literally in the middle of rethinking my next chapter. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all for the compliments. It means a lot to us to be able to share our passion.
Good then. There you go.
I literally don't.
Okay, do we have Dr. Charles? I see your hand up.
Yes, same. I really do appreciate this. This really has been like real informative because I'm in the middle of rethinking my next chapters as well. Again, I've worked in IT for a good bit of time, but I just feel like I'm called to do more and to try to like make a change, beyond building software applications, which I love, but this has really given me a lot of meat in order to be able to try to better myself. So this is real good, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. So glad y'all
Thank
found it.
you.
Thank you.
That word called, right? It
Mhm.
hits deep because we know that we're designed for something more sometimes, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
good luck to you with that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I don't see any more hands up. Dr. Harrison Kelly, Dr. Horton Williams, we truly appreciate your wisdom and for you sharing your time and expertise with us today and helping us kick off our workshop series. As another reminder, please register for the BDN conference. You can meet the Dr. Tony Harrison Kelly and Dr. Sharla Horton Williams there if you register now. And as we mentioned, we are back next Tuesday with a new series. So please join us then. Take care.